Okay, real talk. You wake up, you check your phone, you go to work or school, you sit there for 8 hours doing stuff you don't care about, you come home, you're exhausted, you watch Netflix for an hour to decompress, you sleep, and then you do it again. Sound familiar? Now, here's the question that should keep you up at night. Ancient humans didn't have jobs. No alarm clocks, no emails, no deadlines, no boss breathing down their neck. So what the heck did they actually do all day? Because scientists looked into this, and the answer is honestly kind of infuriating. Let's rewind about 300,000 years. You're Homo sapiens. You live in a small group of maybe 20 to 50 people. You have no government, no rent, no Wi-Fi. Your whole job, your entire reason for existing is to find food, not get eaten, and keep the group alive. Now, most of us assume this must have been absolutely brutal. Like, every single waking moment was a desperate scramble to survive. The prehistoric world as one giant stress test, and honestly, that's what people believed for a really long time. Victorian era scientists looked at hunter-gatherers and basically said, these poor savages, they have nothing. They must suffer constantly. They were so confident. They were also completely embarrassingly wrong. In the 1960s, an anthropologist named Marshall Solins did something that shook the entire field of anthropology. He actually went and studied modern hunter-gatherer tribes, people who were still living the way our ancient ancestors did, and he measured very carefully how many hours per day they spent working. The answer? 3 to 5 hours a day. That's it. 3 to 5 hours to find food, make tools, maintain their shelter, everything. A Cambridge University study of the Agta people in the Philippines backed this up. These hunter-gatherers averaged about 20 hours of leisure time per day when they were purely foraging. For comparison, the average modern office worker has maybe 3 to 4 hours of free time after work and commuting. Hunter-gatherers had roughly 5 times more free time than you do. And anthropologist James Sussman, who spent years living with the Jew Hoansi people of the Kalahari, found they worked about 15 hours per week total. 15 hours per week. That's less than most people work in 2 days. Let that sink in. Now the question is, what were they actually doing with all that time? Okay, so here's where it gets genuinely interesting. Because when researchers ask what hunter-gatherers do with their leisure time, the answer isn't just sitting around staring at rocks. It's actually a lot. Number one, storytelling. This one is huge. Ancient humans were obsessed with stories. Not just for entertainment, stories were how they taught survival skills, passed down knowledge, explained the world around them. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer tribes found that evening storytelling sessions could last for hours. People would gather around the fire and tell stories about hunts, about ancestors, about the stars. One study found that among the Agda people, the most valued skill in their community wasn't being the best hunter or the strongest fighter. It was being the best storyteller. YouTubers, take note. This instinct is apparently 300,000 years old. Number two, music and dance. Here's a fact that should blow your mind. The oldest musical instruments ever found are flutes carved from bird bones dating back at least 40,000 years. But archaeologists think music goes back way further than that, because the primary musical instrument was always the human voice. And researchers believe our ancestors had the full vocal range for singing at least 500,000 years ago. 500,000 years of music, and it gets cooler. A researcher named Igor Reznikov went into Paleolithic caves in France, places like Lascaux, Chauvet, and mapped where the cave paintings were located. Then he mapped the acoustics of those same caves. The most elaborate paintings almost always found in the spots with the best echo and reverberation. These people weren't just painting, they were performing. They deliberately chose the rooms with the best acoustics to sing and chant in basically the world's first concert venues. Lascaux Cave. Capacity: maybe 30 screaming prehistoric humans. Vibe: unmatched. Number 3. Games and play. Play isn't just for kids. In hunter-gatherer societies, adults played constantly. Wrestling matches, throwing competitions, foot races, games with bones as dice. Children and adults engaged in play together in ways that modern societies have completely separated. Psychologist Peter Gray found something fascinating. Their play had almost no rules imposed from above. No coaches, no referees. They played for the sheer joy of it. And here's the thing about all this. The line between work and fun was basically non-existent for ancient humans. Hunting, technically work, but also chasing animals through a forest with your best friends, that's also kind of amazing. Gathering plants, work, but also a social outing where you gossip, tell stories, and eat berries along the way. Their work was what most of us would call an adventure. Now here's something that's easy to miss when we think about ancient humans. They were never alone, like almost never. In modern hunter-gatherer societies, nearly all activity happens in a social context. Even individual tasks like making a spear or preparing food happen with other people nearby, talking, joking, commenting on each other's work. Ugh, grok. That's a terrible spear. Very wobbly. Very embarrassing for you. The concept of going home and shutting yourself in a room alone, completely foreign. Gossip, and yes, I mean gossip in the most scientific sense, was actually a primary social activity. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar argued that gossip was essentially the glue that held human societies together. It's how you tracked relationships, alliances, reputations. Did you hear what Krog did at the hunt last week? Absolutely embarrassing. He tripped over nothing. This was important social information. Ancient Instagram, basically, except instead of likes, the currency was inclusion in the group, which was literally survival. And children? Children in hunter-gatherer societies had something almost revolutionary by modern standards. Free, unstructured play for most of the day. No school schedules, no structured activities, no helicopter parenting. Kids would spend hours exploring, creating games, testing the limits of what they could do. Peter Gray calls this the natural educational system humans evolved with, and argues that removing it is one of the biggest mistakes of modern civilization. Okay, full picture time, because it's not all campfire stories and bone flutes. Ancient human life had some genuinely terrible parts that their leisure time couldn't fix. Infant mortality was brutal. In many prehistoric societies, roughly a third of children didn't make it past age 5. Every family knew loss in a way most of us can barely imagine. Violence between groups was real. Evidence of prehistoric warfare and raids goes back tens of thousands of years. Seasons changed everything. Summer leisure? Great. Winter? Drought? Or a failed hunt? Suddenly those 20 hours of free time turn into 20 hours of very anxious, very hungry waiting. And the pressure of social life in a small group cuts both ways. Yes, you had community, but you also couldn't escape anyone, ever. The person who annoyed you at dinner, they're sleeping 8 feet away. They've been sleeping 8 feet away for your entire life. They will continue to sleep 8 feet away indefinitely. Ancient humans didn't have me time. They didn't have privacy. They didn't have the option of just going somewhere else. So their leisure wasn't some perfect paradise. It was deeply human, chaotic, social, sometimes beautiful, sometimes horrible. Now here's the part of this story that genuinely messes with your head. About 12,000 years ago, humans discovered agriculture, farming, and everyone assumed, including most scientists for a long time, that this was the great leap forward, the upgrade, the moment humans went from struggling survivors to thriving civilizations. More food, stability, progress. Except the Cambridge University study of the Agta people found something deeply uncomfortable. The Agta communities that had shifted to farming worked 30 hours per week instead of 20. They had significantly less leisure time. Women especially pulled from social activities into fieldwork, and ancient skeletal evidence tells the same story. The bones of early farmers show more signs of physical stress, more repetitive strain injuries, worse dental health from a grain-heavy diet than hunter-gatherer bones from the same era. In other words, farming made humans work harder, not less. We traded leisure for surplus, community for storage, playful social existence for scheduled, laborious production. Anthropologist Marshall Salins called hunter-gatherers the original affluent society, not rich in things but rich in time, rich in freedom, rich in exactly the kind of life that our brains were built for. And when the Agta farmers were offered the chance to go back to pure foraging, many of them did repeatedly. Because 5 hours of work a day in exchange for 20 hours of freedom is a pretty compelling offer. So here's where we land. Ancient humans, at least for the hundreds of thousands of years before farming, weren't miserable, desperate survivors clinging to life. They were, by many measures, having more fun than you are right now. They worked a fraction of your hours. They spent their days with people they genuinely loved. They told stories, made music in caves with perfect acoustics, played games for no reason except that it felt good. Their work was play, their play was work. The line between the two barely existed. And then we invented agriculture, and then industry, and then capitalism, and now we have apps that remind us to take deep breaths. I'm not saying go live in a cave, although, honestly, depending on your rent situation, that option exists. The real takeaway here is something quieter. The things that made ancient humans leisure, fulfilling storytelling, music, social connection, unstructured play, genuine friendship, those aren't ancient. Those are just human, and they're still available. We just made them really, really hard to access. If you found this interesting, hit subscribe. We do this every week. And if you work more than 15 hours a week, I'm sorry. The Jew, Hoansi, would be very confused by you. See you next time.